those that choose the readings, as wise and learned as they are, always seem to pick them apart and cut out important parts. And I deliberately didn't read the important part because it explains what I read. And I want a chance to explain it to you myself. That little stretch of woes that we didn't read is important. How many times have you and I used or heard the expression, "Oh, how I remember the good old days and I wish I was back there again. Life was so much simpler, so much easier." We've said that for centuries. Because every generation, as it grows to maturity, begins to realize that it was so much better when they were younger. They didn't have the worries that they have now. What they don't realize is that the worries were there, only it was their parents that were doing the worrying. And before them, the grandparents, and so on and so on. We have always had those worries with us. We just haven't recognized them until we got a little older. We look about us today and we see world leaders that are at each other's throats. They're in irritate mode, irritating, confronting, agitating, trying to get somebody to blink, somebody to do something they shouldn't do, and create a disturbance. I'm almost certain that there are people around who figure that the world isn't good enough until you have a good war to settle it down. It took a world war to bring the world out of a depression. Nothing like a war to get the mechanism of industry moving again. I don't think a war will get the mechanism of industry moving today. It's moving about as fast as it's going to move, which in my mind is way too fast for me. There's a game of chicken going on. Who's going to blink first? Who's the greatest? Who's the best? Who's the strongest? There is no desire to get along, no desire to work together to find a common goal. The thing is that life today is no different than it was in Jesus' day. He faced animosity almost from the word go. It seems that people who seek to make a real difference in life and the lives of others always face difficulty. You see, trying to make life better for others means they've got to change something. None of us likes change. Oh, we say we need change. It'll make things better. But I like the way I'm doing things, thank you. Well, coming in many different shapes and sizes, ignorance, skepticism, unbelief, unwillingness, deceit, and even outright persecution are still the same. We dress them up differently, we package them differently, but they're the same. Hostility was habitually a part of Jesus' ministry, his lot in life. The parable of the children in the marketplace occurs within a section of Matthew's Gospel chronicling such opposition to Jesus. He knows the opposition's there. You can see it among the crowd gathered to hear him. The parable itself, in verses 16, the second part, through verse 17, the passage I read, is preceded by an introductory question in the first half of that verse. To what can I compare this generation? To what can I compare this generation? It's followed by its application to the ministries of Jesus and John the Baptist in verses 18 and the first part of 19. And by concluding the parable with a wisdom saying, the second half of that 19th verse, Jesus calls to us, asking what our response will be. Now I suppose I can sit down because you've got all you need to figure it out. But it's too early. It's only 10 minutes to 11. I can get done by 11 o'clock. That parable that features that little children's game. Ever wonder what it means? We played the flute for them, or for you, and you did not dance. We sang a dirge and you did not mourn. Doesn't seem to make a lot of sense. It's a game. It's a children's game. One group of children would start on a tune that you'd find at a wedding. And they'd sing it out. And they expect the other half of the kids to act out a wedding ceremony and the celebration that comes after it. Then they would sing music appropriate for a funeral, a dirge. And they would expect the other half of the kids to mourn. Kids were singing both the joyful music and the sad music, but nobody was acting out the other half. The people are not playing the game. That generation has lost its focus. You see, the game lacked the imagination to generate what was needed. Children love to copy adults. Children learn by copying adults. They see it, they try it. They repeat it. They never tire of the same series of events over and over and over again. You tickle a baby, the baby giggles. You tickle the baby, it giggles again. You can keep doing that as long as you want because the child enjoys it. It's a game. They're expecting more. Children are addicted to the end of the game. The cackles and cries of the children in a marketplace hardly qualifies as starting unexpected. See, you expect that. Kids will entertain themselves while the parents are in the marketplace bartering with the people selling. The parable's playful, innocent, and lifelike character lulls its audience, both ancient and modern, into a false sense of security. It's a happy scene. It's a joyful scene. Everything is wonderful, going along well. However, the solemnity and the gravity of weddings and funerals, legitimate times of great human joy and sorrow, respectively, should slow us in our rush to trivialize the story. Think of your own experiences at weddings and funerals. You're not sad at a wedding, and you're not particularly joyful at a funeral. And yet these things are not really happening here. Further, the children's outright refusal to play the game gives us pause, since we can listen for that ominous silence. We don't like silence. We've got to fill it with something. Silence is dangerous. Because what you do when you are silent, your mind starts to work. You start to think about things. You don't want to think about things. So we fill it with sound. How many here can remember as teenagers coming home from school with a load of homework, and what's the first thing you do? You turn on the radio, get the music bouncing, then you do your homework. You ever notice the older you get, the less you can stand the distraction of something in the background when you're trying to concentrate? Gee, we finally got it right. It took us a long time, but we did. We all do it. I have headphones for my laptop, and I had them also for my desktop. And they're always plugged in, partly to keep the annoyance of the beeps and the squizzles that the machine makes when you do different things. Keep it away so I don't listen to it. Every chance I get in whatever game I play, I silence it. I like to play in silence. I used to put headphones on and put on a CD of gospel music while I was working. It's a wonderful background. I enjoyed it. Don't do that anymore. It distracts me, and gee, there's a good idea. I'll start on that. It may not work what I'm working on, but it sounds good. Silence is ominous. There was a preacher in a church in England who had a different kind of service, and he would lead people in prayer. And sometimes he'd have someone from the congregation come up. And this particular Sunday, a layman came up there, and he led the congregation in prayer, and he led them into a time of silence. Now, silent prayer is good. 5 minutes went by, and 10 minutes went by, and nothing was happening. And the man looked longingly and pleadingly down at the minister. How do I get out of this? The minister said, you're in charge. You get us out. He had to find some way of breaking his silence. I certainly hope that people had a lot of good meditation while they were in silent prayer. Now, if you take a look a little closer at this parable, you're going to see some confirmation of our suspicions that the historical references that drive its plotting and its application transform a harmless story about frolicsome children into a severe warning about the most important time in history. You see, the people of that day did not understand that they were standing at the crossroads of history. This generation, he says, positions the Jews of Jesus' day within Israel's history and necessarily invokes the story of God's dealing with the world through Israel. We wailed, verse 17 tells us, echoes the gospel witness of John the Baptist's harsh message of judgment. While neither eating nor drinking accurately portrays John's peculiar lifestyle. He was different. He had a demon, they say. No sane person would go out in the desert dressed in those rough garments and eat nothing but locusts and wild honey and go around talking about repent because the end of the world is coming. these are accusations brought against John, though we have not any recorded incident of such being said. The title Son of Man in verse 19 is Jesus' favorite designation. In contrast to John, Jesus came eating and drinking, and thus was falsely maligned as a glutton and a drunkard. Why, he even ate with sinners. He sat down with tax collectors and didn't even stop and not talk to sinners. He talked to them. He walked with them. He would heal them. He would touch them. You can't do that. In Deuteronomy 21, verse 20, it tells us, "They shall say to the elders, 'This son of ours is stubborn and rebellious. He will not obey us. He is a profligate, extravagant kind of a guy, and a drunkard,' slandering Jesus as a friend of sinners and tax collectors." It was triggered by the character and intent of his ministry. Jesus came to all people. We are asked to see that what really drives the parable is nothing other than what had actually occurred in the ministries of John and Jesus. Further, we are invited to discover ourselves within the parable as it unfolds the plan of God for the world. And herein lies the rub. By adding the wisdom saying, "But wisdom is proved right by her actions," Jesus completes the narrative framework. There's the past, which is the previous generations in which God explained the rules for living to people according to Him. The way you respond to me is this way, basically, is what He was saying. 10 Commandments are a written guide to responding to God. Respond by loving others as I have loved you. Don't do evil things to others as I have not done evil things to you. There's a present. The controversial ministries of John and Jesus, while solemnly repenting at a harsh message of judgment, or joyously receiving a wonderful, wonder-filled message of forgiveness, may seem foolish to us now, there comes a day of vindication and judgment. You either repent or you don't. One leads to joy, one leads to sorrow. There are 6 lessons in this parable. 6. Number 1, God's grace can be experienced by accepting His calls for repentance and His invitations to celebrate. Number 2, the parable underscores God's creative patience. Despite the lack of response, He continues to send messengers. Number 3, while the messengers may be different, the message remains the same. The servants give multiple tellings of the very same story. Number 4, the story includes both judgment and forgiveness. To neglect either is to rip asunder what God has joined together. Number 5, danger always exists for us to refuse the offer of forgiveness and ignore the possibility of repentance. And number 6, Any decision to respond now will be vindicated later. Any decision to ignore now will be regretted later. The message is the same, only the actors have changed. Jesus' words at the end of the chapter are very important for everyone who chooses to follow him. Where do we most often hear those words at the end of this chapter? Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light. Where do you hear that read most often? Funerals.
Yeah.
If a group of words of comfort to people who are in the midst of mourning. Take it to Jesus. He understands. They offer us the needed rest from our labors as we move along the road of life. They offer us comfort in knowing that there is a place that we can go for that needed rest before we go forward in our journey. All of us have a place we long to be to find rest and relief from the things of life. A quiet place somewhere. For me, it's along a babbling brook in a cool bush, or along a flowing river. And those are the places I long to be when life gets heavy. It's quiet, peaceful. The sky, in my view of my mind of that place, is always blue. The sun is always shining. There's always a cooling breeze, and always something to see. The ultimate failure is not to live according to the plotting of God's game. God has set us a game to play in life. The game may require us to sing and dance. It may require us at times to mourn and cry, but whatever response be required, becoming lost in God's purpose is the only way to become a child. Take life as it comes. Don't try to anticipate tomorrow until it gets here. Learn from yesterday. Put aside those things that trouble. Look for the good. And remember always that if you have Christ in your life, there's one beside you who many times is not walking beside you, but carrying you. He carries you through those difficult times. And when you're through them, he sets you down and you walk along together. There is so much more to life than we can ever imagine, if we only take time to see it.